Hello.
We are so refreshed. I will start with you, Alex, because the president is he's in greater peril than he has been, certainly with the Mueller probe. What's going on here?
Well, sure. I mean, I think what the Democrats have done here is they have been swinging wildly at this president from the beginning, since the day he took office. Now one of these punches has finally landed. What was a conversation of interest.
But this to a lot of people feels like nothing.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, and my point is that I wonder how much of their theatrics over the last 2 or 3 years has clouded, what is going on here, and how much they could stand to overplay their hand now that there's kind of the there.
And, well, there is a risk of that. But my worry is, I know that Democrats really want to win, and I know they really hate the president, and they really feel like everyone else hates the president just as much as they do, which is fine. Impeachment is not the best way to remove someone you hate.
True, but I think at this point Democrats are obligated.
I have half stories here, and my issue is that people are rushing to judgment, and they are creating full stories, which means that the other half of the story they don't have, they're really just knitting together in sort of a false tale, and you have to be very careful with that.
Absolutely.
That the DNC had hired an FBI employee to dig up dirt on a political opponent.
Don't want to defend on whether the president has broken the law.
The ICIG report is supposedly coming out in weeks, and this whole thing might be a distraction from that, because that could be damning, and that could reach to those exact issues about the past administration. What do you see here? It's not just battle fatigue from constantly having to go back to Democrats. There is something different here, and I think the White House had better get prepared, because they don't have proper messaging on this. I know the president is blaming his acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, but the president himself, he needs to lock it up and talk about the economy.
I mean, but
I want to ask Alex.
You really do need to tighten up the operation there, and I think that that's critical going into this, particularly because what's before us is a legal proceeding in the House of Representatives, and so the president really needs to tighten up that legal team, to tighten up all the communications that are outgoing from the White House, so that way that things that are said now don't come back to bite the president back later in a further, impeachment inquiry or proceeding.
Well, the problem is it looks like desperation. It doesn't look like strategy, what's happening now, and it doesn't put voters at ease, particularly those who are on the fence, who are going to have a big choice to make in 2020. As you know, most 2020 Democrats, of course, are screaming impeach to anybody who will listen, but one of them now warning her colleagues to be careful how they do it. Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who appeared on this very program just last week, starting an investigation, kickstarting another one into her old email servers. So could Sleepy Joe and Crooked Hillary be in more trouble than the president? I don't think Biden survives this whole thing. I don't think Biden is guilty of crimes. I don't think that matters. I think if we haven't learned the lessons from 2016 about fishing for research in Ukraine, and this president is repeating those same mistakes, Joe Biden is not immune to any of that. And the fact that his campaign was trying to dictate to news divisions who not to have on their show because it's offensive to the vice president, if he's doing that now as a candidate, what's he going to do as president? I don't think he survives. I think Trump might.
Well, I think Biden has some other issues, and that's
aims of this narrative that harm Trump and Biden. And when Elizabeth Warren walks around going, impeach, impeach, people are like, oh, she looks pretty sane. Like, what's she going to do? She's not going to touch
But a lot of people are not paying attention.
At the end of the day, we want to win more than anything else.
But Biden is clearly the best.
I think Democrats want to win, but, they take someone like Jerry Nadler, and they put him in charge of House Judiciary, and he's had a couple of lousy hearings, public embarrassments, and then they have someone like Adam Schiff, who goes out and does this horrible mock parody and opens up himself for criticism, and they're like, yep, that's our guy. That's the guy, this partisan hack. That's the guy they want leading impeachment. So the Democrats aren't doing themselves any favors either.
But neither.
Definitely not. Look, the Democrats hate Donald Trump so much that they are sacrificing Joe Biden on the altar of impeachment to make sure that this happens. And I think that this is what I was talking about before, where the Democrats have a huge opportunity to overplay their hand, whether it's elevating some of these characters like Nadler or like Schiff, who have problematic histories in these hearings, or by claiming that there's nothing there when it comes to Joe Biden, that it shouldn't even be investigated, that it's based on false premises.
Yeah, I don't like that talking point either, where Joe Biden goes, well, everyone has looked into into this and they haven't found nothing, and they've told, and that is not true.
That's a Hillary
But
talking
that
point
is
circa 2016.
That's absolutely true.
No, it's not.
New York
Square. It still doesn't make sense.
It's not credible.
Both of the
that
prosecutors
this, okay,
have
you
said
know that
no.
this place, Burisma Holdings,
Yeah.
was under investigation for money laundering
Yeah.
2 months before Hunter Biden joined the board. They wanted the vice president's son while he was vice president.
So we're saying that the EU, that the United States,
That's
to move
not
the
how it
Ukrainian
works.
prosecutor.
Political figures don't trade their power.
It's been looked
Okay,
into.
that's why
This is
voters
the
are frustrated.
soft spot
But I
for
have to tell you,
Democrats.
I think Republicans who are frustrated with Trump might join up with Democrats and moderate Democrats who are frustrated with Trump, and they might go, you know what? Pence is actually a better option. Here's the guy who can make an easy case and go, you like the economic stability? I will continue that. You like the unorthodox foreign policy? All mine, baby. But you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to tweet.
I'll take Trump over Pence, or Pence over Trump any day of the week.
And this is the exit
Say
ramp
that
for
now.
people.
I cannot wait to show you this tape.
And we will knock him off, too.
When Mike Pence is president and his Supreme Court nominee
For 3 weeks.
is so incredibly conservative.
He doesn't have the cult of personality to have that. This is the moment where you make the full switch.
President Pence. All right. Panel return shortly. First up, the whole impeachment. So break it down for me even further. I mean, this is actually, we've talked about this. We've talked about automation and businesses cutting hours and cutting workers, but they end up paying the ultimate sacrifice, shutting down.
Yeah, you know, politicians always talk about minimum waging. Small businesses who are sitting there saying, I've got 15, 17, 20 employees, and now you're telling me my choices. And either way, anyway, it's the worker who ends up getting hurt as a result of it.
Yeah, and that's what University of Washington study found, that even the workers in Seattle, you know, they were excited because they were getting more money. It was like, yay, business and government. But then, you know, when you cut hours and cut jobs, you wonder why you have these homeless problems in L.A., San Francisco, and Seattle.
And here's business isn't creating those jobs anymore because they're gone to their next office, they're gone to their next corporate board or whatever.
And their favorite stores and restaurants close because of these mom and pop shops, which are supposed to be the backbone of the economy, they can't afford to stay open. But you make such a great point about the bureaucrats, because bureaucracies are filled with uncreative people with dead souls. People who actually start businesses are creative optimists. And bureaucrats, by and large, have never run businesses. They don't know the sweat and the toil that goes into making something successful out of a simple dream.
And they've probably been in their thrive. Guess who moves back in? It's the large business.
That's what happens, and then you develop this natural environment for crony capitalism.
It's so important. You know, we're talking about impeachment. That's what a wealth tax is. That's what the inequality tax they love.
And that's like a double gut punch to people.
It's a tax on what you pay, and it's a loss.
Cool million. Brian Brenberg, thank you so much. I want Bernie's millions. All right, now New York City has just transformed. Everyone should be nice and they should love each other, and we should all give out hugs instead of Christmas cards, but is banning some speech a slippery slope. The party panel is back. Alex Wilkes, Michael Starr Hopkins, and Robbie Suave. So when you look at this, it really is an attack on free speech. Do I think people should run around harassing other people who have accents, or threatening to call ICE, or using the term illegal alien in a demeaning way? No, but who decides what's demeaning and who decides what's a joke and what has ill intent?
It's not only an attack on free speech. I think it is typically says it does not have to be severe. It does not have to be pervasive. It doesn't have to be anything. There's no way a court would agree that it is okay for the government to tell people they can't use illegal alien in the workplace.
Awful.
I don't know how they're going to show there we go. We can sue each other for student loans. All right, what can I say?
So, Alex, a lot of people blame the president and say that he has created this hostile atmosphere. He is so anti-immigration. He wants to build the wall, lock people up, separate families. What do you say?
I mean, look, I think that that's kind of a straw man. I think that this is that's a cover for what's clearly an unconstitutional regulation from New York City here. But, I mean, this isn't terribly surprising for me, for the liberals in New York City, that they came up with this, because for the Democrats, there's really been no limiting principle on immigration immigration. Really in the history of this debate, we can't even get the Democratic presidential contenders to commit to whether or not it's illegal for somebody to come into our border without the proper paperwork or through the proper channels. So if you can't get to a basic definition of what it means to come here illegally and what the appropriate penalties for that should be, I think that it leads to all kinds of mischief.
Yes, we failed on a number of levels, which is just a reinforcement for libertarian principles. Panel, thank you so much. Robbie, Michael, and Alex. Woo! All right, coming up, the push for impeachment full